we're looking eye to eye with a close friend and having a conversation. If we don't do that, then it gets a little abstract, and like a little bit less than real in the way it needs to be real. Okay, so I want to just talk with you in that way today, and if you want to interrupt me or have a question or something or a comment, feel free to raise your hand and we'll try to be conversational too. Whatever you want to do about that is fine with me, and I'll just go with the flow on that. What I want to do today is to make a strong appeal to this region of the diocese to take really seriously what Bishop Dici said about looking at the structures of the church that we have in a creative way. And in this case, that means remembering, you might say, remembering that this region is part of an ecosystem, and that the Hudson Valley already has a long, venerable tradition of environmental work and arts and so on, and that the more that we can strengthen and be part of that and giving it a sacred voice, then we'll be doing something actually kind of incredible in terms of reinventing the church for a new time. And so, like, really now is the time. So if you look at a map of the Hudson Valley, and if you were to imagine all the congregations in it, what we need to be doing more of is connecting through communication and collaboration and so on, all the congregations, so that we're not separate from each other in different points on a map, but we're like a web, a sacred kind of community. And we already do that a little bit already, but for reasons that I'll get to in a minute, it's become urgent that we kind of claim the church as part of a sacred web of life. Okay? All right, so Val has sent out gave us some information in your packets that I'm hoping will be helpful. Don't go to it right now. Sorry. I just want you to know what it is. The main point about this is that we need to keep an eye on the big picture. And by that, I mean what is happening in the world, what's happening in God's creation, what's happening politically, and so on. And also see the world from the inside out. And it's like asking, being in touch with, there's a contemplative side to this, and an action side, contemplation and action. Faith and reason, community and individual. And it's pastoral and mission outreach, all of this. And they're really inseparable, because there's so much of the topic of the climate crisis, for example, that is hugely motivating in a kind of joyful way, especially for the younger generation, and at the same time, kind of terrifying and unthinkable and frustrating and a source of anger. And it's all of that all at once. And that is important because it's just the way it is. It doesn't mean that it's too confusing to deal with or that it's too much. It's just, that's the way it is. All right, so let me make this really personal now. And I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle, but I want to kind of talk with you a little bit about how it is that we mislead ourselves. It's not that we're doing anything wrong, but that we trip over ourselves all the time. We're human beings, right? I mean, we all do that. But it's that kind of thing that it's important to keep in mind about this. Another kind of example was even the word environment. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we not use that word or anything like that. But it still does suggest to us something that's out there and separate from us and almost fiend-like. We know better. And I don't think we should even bother to say let's not use that word. But it's a misleading word. And the issue that we're looking at today is something that we are fully part of. We're part of something that is in a state of crisis. And so to even use the word environment sometimes has already taken us in the wrong direction. Okay? That's just an example. But it's the sensitivity of the intent and the carefulness in listening to each other that I'm really trying to get across. learning how just to listen again. You know how the world is today, you know. It's all about being right and talking and telling other people what to do. And it's like the exact opposite direction that we need to be going, which is learning how to be in the presence of living creatures, including you and me, and respectful. Okay. So when I was at the Deacons Conference, I was going to talk there last year, I was having a conversation with some people, just normal, I think, lunchtime conversation, and it came up, I remember, 30-some years ago, when I was, I approached the diocese about being ordained, and they send you to a psychologist, you know, to be interviewed. And so I walked in the office, I'm a little nervous about it, and I was a graduate student in anthropology at the time, and it was so interesting because, like, if you're an anthropologist, what you don't do is become a priest among anthropologists. And so it's like all my friends were like, you know, all my rocker and all that kind of thing. So, anyway, I go in there and so there's a form, and he asks me the basic questions, name, address, we're just getting started, and he says, how old are you? And it's like, you know, this is the odd thing. See, until very recently, I never was able to remember how old I am. And I would sit there, and I just never did. I mean, after I was about 20, and every time that would come up, I would have to say, okay, what year is it? I was born in 1953, and I would, you know, add and subtract. And now that I'm 65, I remember, and we know why. But this is what happened, was that, okay, we all have, you know, kind of odd things about ourselves. So, the psychologist looks at me, and he starts smiling because I'm adding and subtracting and starting to panic a little bit, and I couldn't come out with it, and I'm thinking, you've got to get this right, Jeff. So he looks at me, and he says, you don't know how old you are. And I said, yes and no, you know. And he started smiling, and he said, I'm the same way. And I said, and I started laughing, and I said, I always just add and subtract. And I said, I could guess, but if I get it wrong, you know, is that going to be a strike against me kind of thing? And he said, well, we just don't worry about it. And so we will not tell anybody about that. And then we went on and had a conversation that was like just great. Because I wasn't trying to position, you know, or hide anything. He wasn't either. And so we talked about what it's like, kind of what a struggle it is in a certain way, but in a joyful way too, you know, to just be who you are. And what a big deal that is in life, you know, because you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to go down that road anymore, but, you know, how old are you? I was like, actually, that's a pretty good question, you know. All right, next story. This is the one I really want to get to, but for whatever reason, having remembered that at the Deacons Conference, it sort of stayed with me. And then a couple of the funniness of it, but also something about it within me. You know, because the truth is, I spent most of my life, if someone had asked me, how old are you, wasn't really sure. I just never thought of myself that way. Whatever. All right. So, about a couple months ago, I wake up in the morning, and you know, so we all do this, but sometimes we're in a little bit dreaming and waking at the same time, and there's this transition time, right? It's a magical kind of thing. It's a little weird sometimes, but so this is what happens. And so I wake up, and I'm starting to sit up a little bit, and I know that I'm still dreaming, but I'm waking, and I hear this question: where do you live? And I am awake, you know, and knowing that I'm dreaming, and I'm thinking, and I say 32 Beat High Road, which is my address. And then the counterpart in the conversation says, I know how to find you. I'm asking if you know where you live. And I'm kind of quiet. Don't worry, but just trust me. This is exactly what happened. So we got to learn to talk to each other. All right, so, and then I'm starting to laugh. And I'm kind of remembering that conversation from 30 years ago, which somehow that psychologist just put me at ease in the world somehow. You know, it's okay to be yourself, Jeff. And then, so in this dream a couple months ago, it's like, say 32B High Road. The answer back is, I know where you live. I know how to find you. I want to know if you know where you live. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, I get it. And then a little bit more was, in thinking through as the conversation was kind of going back and forth and I'm coming more into just regular awake life, it was, you think you're not hiding from me and you still are. If you think that you need to tell me your address, I'm asking you if you know where you live. Then, so it's like, okay, I go and get the shower, you know, time to eat. I go to church, on the way to church, and then the intent of this dream keeps happening, just the meaning of it. It's like a force that stays with me. And so I get in my car, I'm driving to the church, and the question is, where is your church? And I started to say, 40 Market Street, Elmville. And it's like, no. It's like, what? Where is the church, Jeffrey? Where is it?
The people.
Okay, we're getting there. Okay, so what is this? You know, I mean, it's like my church, and it's like your church, it's like all our churches, you know. It's a building, it's a sacred space, it's something, what is it we do in there? I mean, is that the church? Yes, and yes, I live on 32B High Road, but that's not the question. Okay, so I don't want to go on this like, you get my point. All right. With that in mind, the latest, Val sent a web link to you that I asked her to, with an article that I'd like for you to read. And it's called What Lies Beneath. Okay? This is about what's really going on in terms of the science and politics and so on, climate and the environmental crisis. And we're not going to go through it all today or anything like that, but I want you to, it's a readable, just recently come out article that talks about, yes? It's not in the packet. It's a web link. It was emailed to me. Sorry. It's 41 pages, and this would be too much. Okay? So let me have your attention now. So it's written by two Australians who are very good. It's a foreword by a Nobel laureate, Schellinghuber is his name, who's German, head of the Potsdam Institute in Germany, one of the leading climate scientists in the world, worked closely with the IPCC. And it's one of the first times in public that scientists are talking about kind of what went wrong in the climate negotiations with the UN and why we have gotten ourselves into such trouble. And this is not the easiest thing to talk about. My wife and I don't like to talk about it at dinner table, you know. Okay. But in it, they outline how it is over the last 20 years that even the UN, for a variety of reasons, has understated the risk. And I want you to learn to be familiar with this because it's going to increasingly become a pastoral issue in members of our congregation, in the churches, and even among ourselves. But generally what has happened is that, like in our country today, where there's still a debate about whether it's real or not, scientists themselves are very concerned about why it is that we understated the risk and we have gotten ourselves into a situation that we can't completely fix. Okay, that's the reality of it. Okay, and why that happened in a nutshell is a number of things. It's that I'm a scientist myself. That was what I did before I became a priest. And I know that scientists are conservative around their, not politically, but around the objectivity. And they're more likely than anything else to understate, because the ethical norm of being a scientist is not to make claims about truth that you can't verify. That's scientific method. Been that way since the Enlightenment. So they will understate in order to be, at least say, what I'm saying to you is true. But it's not the question we've been asking scientists to answer. So what we've been needing to know is how bad is the risk. So for 20-some years, they've been understating this. The Nobel laureate, who on the front of that article, when you read it, it's wonderful that he wrote the foreword because he's been one of the most cautious. And for him to state in a public way is that, yeah, we messed up, is significant. If those of you are interested, I can send you other more scientific articles, Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, and so on. Those are harder to read, but I'll be happy to email those to you. Okay, another reason that this has been understated is that you might have heard of the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and that's the scientific group that writes the reports, that gives the reports to the policymakers, the heads of state, members of member states at UN meetings. That's the information they get. And what's happened was that process of going from science to policy document wasn't just science to policy. Is that it was being, the way the reports were written were already being influenced by governments. And so it was being watered down. And that in the sense that sometimes, well, to be just blunt about it, it was mainly the United States, Russia, and Saudi Arabia who did that. And the reasons given at the time were that, well, it's just not politically possible to do what needs to be done. We also know about the impact of the oil companies and so on in that process. It was very real. I was at a lot of these meetings myself. I don't want to get stuck on that, okay? But I just want you to know that the latest research on climate now that you're going to be hearing more about pretty soon, it's starting to come into the newspapers a little bit, is that it was thought that if we could keep our global average temperatures to 2 degrees centigrade, that's about 3.8 Fahrenheit, above what it was when the Industrial Revolution started. When global average temperatures were the same for like millions of years. Starting about 1750, they started going like this. The reason was because of carbon pollution. Not a debatable. That's what happened. And it's been fairly recent, and now it's happening quicker. The whole issue is, can we level that off or can we turn it down before the carbon cycle starts to make the planet heat up so much that we can't cool it down? This has been known for really 30 years, and in a way kind of 100, but really 30. All right. The UN thought, well, if we can hold it to 2 degrees above that pre-industrial level, we might be okay. Schellenhunden himself was one of the ones that sort of championed the 2 degree thing. James Hansen, U.S. climate scientist, said no, it should be 1. We're at 1.1 now. Right? In the last year or so, scientists have discovered that we underestimated, and that because of methane levels also, in addition to carbon, methane comes from permafrost that's melting, and it releases a gas that's even more potent than carbon as a greenhouse. And then the fracking also releases a lot of methane. The other thing was that once a system starts to change because of heat, because of melting sea ice, because of the way, for example, the ocean currents flow, put it in the Gulf Stream, brings warm water on the coast. You reach a point where it changes the system. And it's not, you can't just turn the thermostat down. And once enough carbon, like right now, the carbon that's already in the atmosphere has its impact. It's going to be there for decades. You know, you can't just stop, and then it doesn't mean that the effect is still going to be there. So it looks like right now the estimates are is that we will have no choice but to reach the 2 degree. which is not safe. If that's true, then between 50 and 80 years, global average temperatures at certain times of the year could be 130 degrees. And half the population would be, lives would be at risk. And we're talking about 2 to 2.5 meters of sea level rise. We're talking about no more Bangladesh and Florida, but in 50 to 80 years. So the governments have to figure out scientists quickly how to pull carbon out of the atmosphere and then do something with it. So it's like, and we don't know how to do that yet. All right, so this is a crazy conversation, right? Okay. How do you have a conversation like this? I don't know. I've been working on this for 30 years in my own self. I will cry sometimes. It's like, Jeff, I don't know if I can talk about it. Okay? But people, we have to talk about it. We have to. We have to for the next generation. We have to figure out to do everything we can to reduce the temperature and the carbon levels so that we're minimizing the disruption that will come. It looks like that it's not avoidable. The question is how much can we do to get through it, to make it work so we get through it. Okay? Do you think I'm crazy because I don't know how old I am?
How old do you feel?
Okay, so what that means, what I've been doing I've known about this in my own self, because I know enough about climate science to know, like Hansen said years ago, is that it's just that melting ice itself reduces the capacity of the Earth to reflect sunlight. So just that alone is going to increase the temperatures, and you can't stop that. So James Hansen was a great scientist, and it ended up that he was right about the 1. We're at 1.1 now, and he said 1 was about as safe as we could reasonably expect. Okay. So, we're the church. Now, it's an odd thing already to be calculating in our minds how much risk, how bad is it going to get before we start to take, God's command to us to take care of my earth seriously. But we do that. In other words, it's business as usual in terms of how things operate. We know it's wrong, but we've not been willing, I don't mean you and me, I mean all of us. We've just sort of been coasting along and kind of waiting to see what happens. And this is the whole thing. You can't wait to see what happens because then it's too late. We know already what's the truth of it. And in terms of how to live, the Bible teaches you to say it really clearly. I wake up in the morning and it's like, where do you live, Jeff? If you're going to tell me your address one more time, that means you're hiding from me. I know how to find you. I want to know if you know. And I'm a Franciscan. I'm a chaplain in the order, talking about the rule of life. We take that real seriously. And so it's like we're asked to, in terms of self-examination, to say, in terms of simplicity, in terms of love, in terms of so on, tell me, Jeff, are you really doing this, or are you just telling yourself you're doing this? It's not an accusation. It's realistic. And that's where we are. So, as a region, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been encouraging the whole global Anglican community to think about our church regionally. I was in South America a couple months ago, meeting with all the bishops in South America, saying in all of our dioceses, we've got to start working together. We're not separate. And why? They all share the Amazon. There's rivers that pass through 2 dioceses. So in order to take care of those rivers, we have to learn to talk to each other and work together to do it. It's the not working together that we're tripping over. It's not listening to each other, taking each other seriously as stewards. So like in our region, the Hudson Valley, we got farmers, we got water issues, we got refugees, we got immigration issues. That's not separate from that. Gender issues. The UN has known for years, since 1990s, was the Women's Summit, when Bella Abzug, powerful person that goes to Beijing and scares the heads of state to death because she is organizing and she knows that for us to make it through this crisis, women's issues, women have to assume leadership positions more and more. That's part of it. And around the work that Frank is doing and other people are doing around refugees. I just got back from a water conference in Stockholm. The government official from Syria stands up and he says, it's just not, we're not talking about this, but we've been having water problems in Syria for years, and what's really behind a lot of this conflict, we're telling ourselves that we're divided because of religion. It's not. It's because of water shortages all over the place. We got to learn how, and so that whole conference was about water as a reason to come together. A 14-year-old indigenous person from Canada, 14-year-old, who has stood up and said, I'm going to be an elder someday, and we have half of my people have no choice but to drink bottled water. Why? Can any of them in this room tell me why? And there's no real answer. There are answers that can be given. But what she said was that the answers are right here, but we're not listening. We know the answers. So I'm making a strong appeal as I can for us in terms of being the church, because I know, in the next generation after that, people are going to be looking for the church. They're going to need the church like we did, but they will. And so we need to start rebuilding that church now, so that our carbon emissions are down. We've been doing that. Our diocese does really well on this. We've got farther to go. I know in my own parish, we discovered this year that we've solved a lot of the heating and electricity problems, not completely, but the problem we have in the summer is humidity. I mean, in July and in August and September, July and August, I'm not good with time. It was hard to be in the building.
Yes.
So we've got, who are we calling now? Stained glass people, but I got to get that stained glass renovated so we can open windows. I didn't realize that until this summer. We have to become friends. Jesus said, I want you to be friends. He said, I know you don't get it. We don't get it. But if y'all can really be friends, then we're on the path. Don't be afraid of being who you are. Don't be afraid not to know. But you're going to have to take me seriously about this love thing. And so, and I think, especially with the Hudson Valley, is that we can see ourselves as not only a region, but an eco-region. And learn to be with each other in that way and organize and have joint projects. And, say, this year, let's all do this. Well, let's all do different things, but let's all do different things together. Then we're going to be the kind of church that the next generation is not only going to want, but going to need. Okay? I turned 65 last night. I know how old I am.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, everybody.